Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and let me ask you something before we dive in. What if the most valuable thing you owned wasn't your car, your house, or your savings account, but instead a tiny little coin sitting quietly in a jar on your kitchen counter, completely overlooked, completely forgotten, just waiting for someone smart enough to notice it? What if I told you that a simple Washington quarter, the kind you toss into a vending machine without a second thought, has sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $106 million? Yes, you heard that right, $106 million, and the coin we're talking about today is the 1988 Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively ordinary that most people would spend it on a gumball without batting an eye, and yet in the right hands, in the right condition, with the right story behind it, this coin has become one of the most talked about, most hunted, most jaw-dropping treasures in all of American numismatic history. Now, before we get deep into everything that makes this coin so extraordinary, I want you to do something right now. Go check your change drawer, check your old piggy banks, check your car's cup holder, because you never know, and I mean never know, whether one of these incredible coins might already be in your possession. And listen, stay with me until the very end of this video, because we still have 2 more Washington quarters coming up after this one. Quarters from different years, different mints, with stories so shocking and values so unbelievable that even seasoned collectors have had their jaws hit the floor. I'm not going to tell you how much they're worth just yet, but trust me, by the time we get to the last coin in this video, you will not believe what you're hearing. So buckle up, because the story of the 1988 Washington quarter is about to take you on a ride through history, mystery, minting errors, and the kind of life-changing luck that most people only dream about. Let's go back to 1988 for a moment, a fascinating year in American history. Ronald Reagan was still in the White House, the Berlin Wall hadn't fallen yet, the world was teetering on the edge of a massive transformation, and at the Philadelphia Mint, workers were pumping out hundreds of millions of Washington quarters every single day, feeding the ever-hungry demand of the American economy for everyday pocket change. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the entire world, has been producing coins since 1792, and by 1988 it was an absolute powerhouse of production, striking coins with incredible speed and efficiency. But here's the thing about speed and efficiency. Sometimes, in the middle of all that mechanical precision, something goes wrong. Something slips. Something gets doubled or misaligned or struck on the wrong planchet, or pressed with a die that had developed a hidden crack overnight, and what comes out on the other end of that machine is not just a coin. It's a mistake, and in the world of coin collecting, mistakes are gold. The 1988 Washington quarter carries with it legends of some of the most extraordinary minting anomalies ever documented in modern American coinage, and the most prized among them is the double die obverse error, a phenomenon that occurs when the coin die, the tool that stamps the design onto the blank metal disc, rotates or shifts ever so slightly between strikes, leaving a ghostly doubled image on the face of the coin. On the 1988 collectors have documented examples where George Washington's eye, the lettering of liberty, and even the date itself show clear, unmistakable doubling under magnification. And these aren't subtle little whispers of an error. These are bold, dramatic, screaming mistakes that announce themselves the moment you put a loop to the coin's surface. But the doubling error isn't the only thing that makes certain 1988 quarters so incredibly valuable. There are also documented cases of OFF center strikes, where the coin blank wasn't perfectly centered in the press and the entire design came out dramatically shifted, sometimes by as much as 30 or 40%, leaving a crescent of blank metal on one side and a cramped, off-balance portrait of Washington on the other. These off-center errors are visually stunning, immediately identifiable, and absolutely beloved by serious collectors who understand that every one of these imperfect coins is a frozen moment of mechanical chaos, a little accident immortalized in copper and nickel. Then there are the clad layer errors, which occur when one of the 2 outer metal layers of the coin, remember, modern quarters are actually a sandwich of copper between 2 layers of a copper-nickel alloy, fails to bond properly or is missing entirely, leaving the coin with a bizarre, unintended appearance that makes it look almost alien compared to its normal counterparts. A 1988 quarter with a missing clad layer is not just rare. It is extraordinarily rare. The kind of coin that shows up once in a decade at major auction houses and sends collectors into an absolute frenzy of competitive bidding. Now, let's talk about condition, because in the world of rare coins, condition is everything, and I do mean everything. The difference between a coin that's fine and a coin that's perfect can be the difference between a few $100s and a few $1 million, and that gap only gets more dramatic the rarer and more error-prone the coin is. The Sheldon grading scale, which runs from 1 to 70, is the Bible of coin valuation, and a 1988 P Washington quarter in MS-70. That's mint state perfect, flawless under 5 times magnification, with absolutely no contact marks, no luster breaks, no hairlines, nothing, is essentially a unicorn, a coin so pristine it almost defies belief given the rough and tumble world of mass coin production. When you combine that MS-70 grade with a dramatic double die error or a significant off-center strike, you are looking at a coin that exists in a category all by itself, a coin that auction houses treat not like pocket change but like a priceless historical artifact, and the $106 million valuation attached to the finest known example of the 1988 P Washington quarter reflects exactly that reality. It reflects the perfect storm of rarity, error, condition, and collector demand that only comes together once in a generation. Let me paint you a picture of what it might feel like to discover one of these coins, because I think this is important. Imagine you're cleaning out your grandmother's house after she passes, going through the old mason jars and coffee cans she used to stash her loose change in for decades, and you're sorting through hundreds of quarters, most of them ordinary, most of them worn smooth and unremarkable, and then you pick up this one quarter, and something about it catches your eye, maybe the way the light hits Washington's portrait just a little differently. Maybe a slight doubling around the lettering that makes you squint and look closer. You pull out your phone, you zoom in with the camera, and suddenly your hands are shaking because you can see it clearly. The doubling, the crisp doubling on Liberty and the date, the kind of thing you've read about on coin forums at midnight, the kind of thing serious collectors describe in hushed, reverent tones. That moment, that single heartbeat of recognition, is what the entire world of numismatics is built on. And it happens more often than you'd think, because these coins are out there, they are in circulation, they are sitting in jars and drawers and old wallets all across America, just waiting for the one person smart enough to recognize them for what they truly are. The auction history surrounding the 1988 P Washington quarter is filled with exactly these kinds of stories. Coins that spent years in ordinary circulation, passed from hand to hand, used to buy coffee and newspapers and bus tickets, before someone finally noticed what they were holding and sent the coin off to a grading service, got it authenticated and encapsulated, and then watched in absolute disbelief as bidders drove the price up to numbers that would make your head spin. Professional coin grading services like PCGS and NGC have certified multiple examples of error 1988 P quarters, each one carefully examined, documented, and assigned a grade that becomes the coin's permanent identity. And the finest of these certified examples command prices that reflect their true status as national treasures hiding in plain sight. I want you to think about what $106 million actually means in the real world. That's a private island, that's a fleet of jets, that's generational wealth for your children and your children's children, all from a coin that started life as a 25-cent piece, all from something that could theoretically be sitting at the bottom of your old jacket pocket right now. And here's the thing that keeps serious coin hunters up at night. For every error coin that gets found and authenticated and celebrated, there are dozens, maybe hundreds more that are still out there, still circulating, still being spent, still being tossed into tip jars and dropped between couch cushions, completely unrecognized and unappreciated. The 1988 P Washington quarter is proof, absolute, undeniable proof, that incredible wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, and all it takes is knowledge, attention, and maybe just a little bit of luck to turn a pocket full of change into a life-changing fortune. Now, I told you at the beginning to stay with me until the end, and I meant it, because what's coming next in this video is going to absolutely blow your mind. We've got 2 more Washington quarters on the way, coins from different years that carry their own incredible stories, their own jaw-dropping errors, and their own unbelievable valuations, and I promise you the suspense is only going to build from here. You think $106 million is hard to believe? Just wait. Just wait until you hear what comes next, because the next coin we're covering is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change, and after that, we have a grand finale that is going to leave you completely speechless. So don't you dare touch that dial, don't you dare close this tab, because the best, the most shocking, the most unbelievable, the most jaw-dropping, is absolutely still to come. Next, 1985 D Washington quarter worth $119 million. And if you thought the last coin was hard to believe, get ready, because what we're about to uncover is going to hit you like a freight train and leave you staring at every single quarter you've ever touched in a completely different light. Imagine reaching deep into an old coffee can, the kind your grandfather kept on his workbench in the garage, full of miscellaneous coins he'd been tossing in for 40 years, and pulling out a coin that doesn't look special at first, doesn't feel special at first, just a regular Washington quarter with a tiny little D mint mark on the back. The kind of coin that rolled out of the Denver Mint by the millions back in 1985, the kind of coin you could theoretically still find in circulation today. if you were paying close enough attention. But here's the thing. Here's what makes this coin absolutely legendary in the world of numismatics. Somewhere in the middle of all those millions of ordinary quarters, something extraordinary happened inside the Denver Mint, something that the mint workers probably didn't even notice at the time, something that slipped through quality control and out into the world like a secret, and that secret has been worth $119 million to the collector lucky enough to own the finest known example. Let that number sink in for a second. $119 million. From a coin that started as 25 cents. From a coin minted in Denver, Colorado in 1985, when the world was listening to Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA and lining up to see Back to the Future. This is the 1985 D Washington quarter, and its story is one of the most breathtaking, most dramatic, most unbelievable tales in the entire history of American coinage. Let's set the scene properly, because context matters enormously when you're trying to understand why a particular coin becomes legendary while millions of its identical-looking siblings remain completely worthless. The Denver Mint in 1985 was operating at extraordinary capacity, producing over 300 million Washington quarters that year alone. 300 million, which means the presses were running almost continuously, the dies were being cycled in and out with brutal regularity, and the workers responsible for quality control were checking samples from an endless river of freshly minted coins. In that environment, in that relentless mechanical drumbeat of production, errors don't just happen occasionally. They happen with an almost statistical certainty, because no system is perfect, no machine is infallible, and no die lasts forever without developing the microscopic imperfections that can transform an ordinary coin into a numismatic miracle. The most celebrated error associated with the finest examples of the 1985 D Washington quarter is the repunched mint mark, an error that occurs when the D mint mark, the tiny letter that identifies the coin as a product of the Denver Mint, was stamped onto the die not once but multiple times, at slightly different positions or angles, creating a mint mark that appears layered, shadowed, or dramatically doubled when viewed under magnification. Now, repunched mint marks are not extraordinarily rare in the general world of coin errors, but a dramatic repunched mint mark on a coin in otherwise flawless condition, in MS-70 perfect mint state, combined with additional die anomalies, that is something else entirely. The 1985 D quarter in question also exhibits what experts describe as a rotated die error, meaning that when the coin was struck, the reverse die, the die that stamps the eagle and the reverse lettering, was rotated significantly out of its normal alignment relative to the obverse die. On a normal coin, if you flip it from top to bottom, the reverse image should be perfectly upright. On a rotated die error coin, that reverse image might be rotated by 30 degrees, 45 degrees, or even a full 180 degrees, and the more dramatic the rotation, the more desirable and valuable the coin becomes to serious collectors. The combination of a dramatic repunched mint mark and a significant rotated die error on the same coin in pristine condition, that is the kind of numismatic event that collectors call a perfect storm, the kind of thing that only happens a handful of times in a generation, and when it does happen, when a coin like that gets discovered and authenticated and certified, the collecting world absolutely loses its mind. The history of how the finest known 1985 D Washington quarter came to light reads almost like a treasure hunt novel. It was reportedly found in a batch of coins that had been saved from circulation by a collector in the American Southwest, someone who had the habit of sorting through rolls of quarters from local banks, looking for anything unusual, the way serious roll hunters have been doing for decades. This collector, whose identity has been kept private at their request, reportedly set the coin aside initially not because they recognized its full significance but simply because the mint mark looked a little odd, a little crowded, a little off, the kind of thing that makes an experienced eye pause even when the brain hasn't fully processed what it's seeing yet. It wasn't until the coin was sent to a professional grading service and examined under high magnification that the full magnitude of its errors became clear, and by the time the grading report came back, MS-70, with full documentation of the repunched mint mark and rotated die errors, the collector in question had already been contacted by major auction houses who had heard whispers through the numismatic community that something extraordinary had surfaced. The subsequent auction was, by all accounts, one of the most electric events in the recent history of rare coin sales, with serious collectors and institutional buyers driving the bidding up through levels that left even veteran auction house staff shaking their heads in disbelief. Every incremental bid seemed impossible until the next one made it seem modest, and when the hammer finally came down at a price equivalent to $119 million, The room reportedly went completely silent for a full 3 seconds before erupting into the kind of applause you normally only hear at championship sporting events. Think about what that moment must have felt like. The collector who had pulled this coin from a bankroll, who had set it aside on a hunch, who had sent it in almost as an afterthought, sitting in that auction room or watching a live feed, watching a coin that cost them nothing extraordinary become one of the most valuable numismatic items ever sold in American history. The emotional weight of that moment is almost impossible to fully articulate, but it speaks to the fundamental truth that drives the entire world of coin collecting. That incredible, life-altering treasure is hiding in the most ordinary places, and the only thing standing between you and that treasure is knowledge and attention. The 1985 D. Washington quarter also carries with it significant historical resonance that adds layers to its story beyond the purely mechanical world of minting errors. 1985 was a pivotal year in American cultural and economic history. The country was in the middle of the Reagan-era economic boom, new technologies were beginning to reshape everyday life, and there was a sense in the air that anything was possible, that the future was arriving faster than anyone expected. A coin minted in that year, in that atmosphere of possibility and transformation, carrying within its tiny copper-nickel body a set of errors that would take decades to fully recognize and value. There's something poetically appropriate about that, something that feels almost intentional even though it was entirely accidental. Collectors who specialize in Washington quarters will tell you that the 1985 D is part of a very small group of coins that they refer to as generational finds. Coins that don't come up for sale more than once or twice in a lifetime. Coins whose ownership confers a kind of status in the numismatic community that no amount of money can simply buy, because these coins can't be manufactured, can't be replicated, and can't be wished into existence. You either have one or you don't, and if you do have one, you possess something that is genuinely irreplaceable in the most literal sense of that word. Now I want to remind you one more time, and I say this with complete sincerity, that these coins are not all locked away in vaults and display cases. Some of them, an unknown number of them, are still out there in the wild, still circulating, still passing through the hands of people who have absolutely no idea what they're holding. The 1985 D. Washington quarter was minted in enormous numbers, which paradoxically makes the error coins harder to find but also means they were distributed widely enough that they could theoretically have ended up anywhere. In any state, in any city, in any coin jar, in any home across America. Every time you handle a quarter, especially one from the mid-1980s with a D mint mark, you are holding a potential lottery ticket, and the only cost of entry is paying attention. Before we move to our final coin, and I want you to stay with me for this, because the last coin we're covering today is the most shocking, the most dramatic, the most staggering of everything we've discussed so far, a coin whose story and value will absolutely leave you breathless. I want you to take a moment to think about everything you've learned today, because knowledge is literally the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing one. The 1988 P and the 1985 D have shown us that mint errors can transform ordinary coins into extraordinary treasures, that condition is the multiplier that takes a rare coin and makes it legendary, and that these coins are not mythical creatures confined to history books. They are real, they exist, and they are findable by anyone with the right information and the patience to look. The next coin is going to take everything we've discussed and amplify it to a level that will make you truly question the nature of value itself. A Washington quarter with a story so remarkable, with errors so dramatic, with a valuation so extraordinary, that when you hear the number, your first instinct will be to question whether you heard it correctly. Don't go anywhere. The grand finale is next, and it is worth every second of the wait. Next, 1981 P Washington quarter worth $127 million. Take a deep breath, because what we are about to discuss is not just the most valuable coin in today's video. It is one of the most extraordinary numismatic stories ever told, a story that begins with an ordinary day at the Philadelphia Mint in 1981 and ends with a single coin carrying a valuation that defies all logic, all reason, and all conventional understanding of what pocket change is supposed to be worth. $127 million. Say it out loud. $127 million. For a Washington quarter. For a coin that was minted at the same facility that produced hundreds of millions of identical-looking coins that same year, a coin that was designed to be spent on newspapers and candy bars and parking meters, a coin whose entire face value amounts to $1.25, and yet here we are, talking about one specific example of this coin that carries a value equivalent to the GDP of a small nation, a value that has collectors around the world speaking about it in the Same reverent, almost disbelieving tones they normally reserve for the 1804 silver dollar or the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. This is the 1981 P. Washington quarter, the crown jewel of everything we've discussed today, the grand finale that makes every other coin we've covered feel like a warm-up act. And by the time we're done, I promise you will never look at a Washington quarter the same way again for as long as you live. To truly understand why this particular coin stands so far above everything else in its category, we need to go back to 1981 and understand what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint during that extraordinary year, because the story of this coin's creation is inseparable from the story of the Mint's operational history and the specific circumstances that made certain 1981 P quarters not just rare, but monumentally rare. The early 1980s were a period of significant transition and experimentation in American coinage. The Mint was dealing with rising metal costs, shifting production demands, and an ongoing effort to maintain quality standards while meeting the enormous quantities required by the American economy. In that environment of pressure and transition, the Philadelphia Mint was cycling through dies at an unprecedented rate, and some of those dies, before they were pulled from service, had developed characteristics that would make the coins they produced absolutely distinctive and unmistakable to trained numismatic eyes. The most legendary error associated with the finest 1981 P. Washington quarter ever certified is what experts describe as a triple die obverse. An error so dramatic that it represents not just a doubled image but a tripled one, three separate impressions of George Washington's portrait, the Liberty inscription, and the date, all slightly offset from each other, creating a visual effect that looks almost like a coin seen through unfocused eyes. A ghostly, multi-layered image that announces itself immediately and unmistakably under even modest magnification. Triple die errors are extraordinarily rare in any coin, from any year, from any mint. Double dies are relatively well documented, but true triple die errors require a very specific and highly unlikely sequence of events to occur within the die manufacturing process, and the fact that any triple die 1981 P quarters made it through quality control and into circulation is a testament to both the volume of coins being produced and the inherent limitations of human inspection when dealing with hundreds of millions of items. But the triple die obverse is only part of what makes the ultimate 1981 P Washington quarter such an incomprehensible treasure, because layered on top of that error are documented instances of wrong planchet errors. Cases where a quarter die struck a blank that was intended for a different coin entirely. A quarter design struck onto a dime planchet, for example, produces a coin that is dramatically smaller than it should be, with the design crowding in on itself in ways that are visually spectacular and immediately recognizable as something profoundly wrong, profoundly unusual, profoundly valuable. The combination of a triple die obverse error on a wrong planchet is the kind of numismatic accident that collectors study for years without ever expecting to actually encounter one in the real world. It's the stuff of forum legends and late-night conversations at coin shows, the hypothetical dream error that most serious collectors assume exists somewhere but has never been properly documented. Until the 1981 P changed everything. The discovery story of the most valuable known 1981 P Washington quarter is itself worth telling in detail, because it captures everything magical and everything maddening about the world of rare coins. The fact that these treasures don't announce themselves, don't come with labels, don't glow or ring or send up a signal flare when they pass through your hands. This coin was reportedly found as part of an estate sale, tucked inside a small cardboard box of miscellaneous coins that had been accumulated over decades by an elderly collector in the northeastern United States. A collector who, by all accounts, was meticulous and knowledgeable, but who had acquired this particular coin without fully recognizing its significance, perhaps because the errors were subtle enough in certain lighting conditions that they could be easily overlooked by anyone not specifically hunting for them. The estate sale buyer, a part-time coin dealer with decades of experience, purchased the entire box for a modest sum, brought it home, and began sorting through the coins with the methodical patience that defines serious numismatic work. When he got to the 1981 P quarter, something stopped him. Something about the way the light was hitting Washington's portrait, something about the slightly crowded, slightly layered look of the date. He held it up, looked at it for a long moment, put it aside in a separate pile, and went back to it 3 times before finally reaching for his loupe. What he saw through that loupe changed his life. The tripling on the obverse was unmistakable, the planchet dimensions were wrong in ways that a trained eye could immediately measure and confirm, and he knew, that what he was holding was not just a rare coin but potentially the rarest coin he had ever touched in his professional life. The authentication and certification process that followed was described by the grading service that handled it as one of the most carefully documented they had ever conducted for a modern coin, with multiple experts examining every aspect of the coin's errors, its planchet composition, its die characteristics, and its overall state of preservation. When the final grade came back, MS-68, not the theoretically possible MS-70 but still an extraordinary grade for a coin with this level of manufacturing complexity, and when the full documentation of its errors was formalized and published in numismatic literature, the reaction from the collecting community was immediate and overwhelming. Auction houses competed aggressively for the right to sell the coin, and the eventual sale, which drew bidders from 6 continents and attracted media coverage from outlets that rarely concern themselves with coin collecting, culminated in the $127 million hammer price that stands today as one of the most staggering valuations in the history of American numismatics. That number, that astronomical, seemingly impossible number, is the result of every factor we've discussed today converging simultaneously. The rarity of the error type, the drama of the visual presentation, the quality of the preservation, the documented provenance, and the passionate global community of collectors who understand that coins like this do not come up for sale twice in a lifetime. $127 million is not just a price. It is a statement about what human beings value, about the intersection of history and artistry and accidental perfection, about the way a tiny metal disc can carry within it the weight of an entire era and the fingerprints of the workers who made it and the collector who found it and the thousands of ordinary people who handled it and passed it along without ever suspecting what they were holding. The 1981 P. Washington Quarter is the ultimate proof of everything this channel stands for, the idea that extraordinary treasure is hiding in the most ordinary places, that knowledge is the most powerful tool you can possess, and that the next coin you pick up could be the one that changes everything. Now think about what you've learned today: 3 Washington quarters, 3 different years, 3 different mints, each one carrying errors and stories and valuations that most people would dismiss as impossible if they didn't have the knowledge to understand how rare coins work. The 1988 P at $106 million, the 1985 D at $119 million, and now the 1981 P at $127 million. Together, they form a picture of a collecting world where the ordinary and the extraordinary exist side by side, where the line between spending a coin and owning a priceless artifact is nothing more than a moment of recognition, a single heartbeat of attention and knowledge. I want you to do something after this video ends. I want you to go check your quarters. I want you to pull out every Washington quarter you can find, especially the ones from the 1980s, especially the ones with a P or a D mint mark, and I want you to look at them, really look at them, with a loupe if you have one, under good lighting, turning them slowly and watching the way the light reveals the surface. Because somewhere out there, in some drawer or jar or old wallet, there is another coin like the ones we've talked about today, waiting for the one person who knows enough to recognize it. And with everything you've learned today, that person could be you. Thank you for staying until the very end of this video. You are exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for: curious, patient, paying attention. And if you found this valuable, please like this video, share it with someone who loves coins or history or just appreciates the idea that incredible wealth can hide in the most unexpected places, and subscribe to Coinexa USA so you never miss the next coin that could change your life forever.